Hello everybody! Before we start, I want to make some general notices to you guys. First of all, some safety concerns. We will be dealing with wand making or wood crafting, so that is, with that, you'll be working with a lot of sharp things and a lot of safety concerns come from that. So if you are not an adult, always work with an adult. Supervision is always helpul. If you're not a trained professional, always have someone there watching you. And just generally, if you want to try this, make sure you're making it as safe as possible. Also, because I don't have any power tools here with me, my main tool will be a knife. If you are uncomfortable with the sight of that, now would be a good time to go. Or I will let you know when I will be using it. And before I show it on screen, because I know that's a little hard for some people. But yeah, welcome to the presentation. I'll be talking all about wand making, how I do it. Now everyone does it differently. How I do it will not. If you guys decide to pick it up, will not be the same way you guys will do it. But hopefully this will inspire some people. Maybe you'll learn a little something. But yeah, I've been on the server since I think it was May of 2020. Um, how the process goes, again, it's different for everybody. When I started, I didn't have any power tools such as a lathe, which would be super helpful. All I had was a knife and some sandpaper, which was very difficult. If you're doing it that way, what number one thing to know is that it will take a lot of time. A lot of time. Because sandpaper doesn't take wood off really quickly. It makes for a nice finish, but it's not a good tool to take wood off. First, one important thing to note is that the best way to start by far is just by finding a stick. Like, that's how everyone does it, right? For example, this was my first wand I ever made. It used to be longer. I don't remember why I cut it shorter, but it's very simple. It's literally just a stick that I found. I tried just making it comfortable to hold. It's got like a little thumb here to put your thumb. I thought it was cool at the time. But this is by far the best way to start, is with just a stick that you find. When you start getting into it, you'll learn that there are different things that go into what makes your process easier for making a more dynamic one. Now, I have a few examples here. When I first started really trying to do this, wooden dowels. Wooden dowels have been the number one helpful for me because they're already circular. You can just make your design come out of it. Or you can have the good old block. The good old block is helpful in the sense of you can be more dynamic with what you want to do. You can be more creative. With the dowel, you're kind of stuck doing the straightforward thing. With this, you can start curving it kind of like Bellatrix, stuff like that. The only problem with this is that it's going to take a lot more time. It's going to be a lot more difficult to get through this. Whereas with this, you're limited, but it's going to be a lot quicker. I've been doing this for approximately 2 years now, and because I usually go for the dowel, because my style usually is a more straightforward design anyway. But the block is, I've done some dynamic ones as well, and that's proven the most helpful. Now, another thing to keep in mind when you're making a wand is what kind of wood you're using. One of the most important things is wand wood. And I didn't think wand wood, well, of course in the books, in the movies, it's paramount because a good pairing with wand wood and the core make a good wand. But when it comes to like real life like wands, it's super important because it depends on how you can work with the wood. For example, the hardest wood that I've worked with personally is definitely oak. Now, oak is also one of my favorite woods to work with because oak is very sturdy, it's very strong. And when you have like power tools such as a lathe, um, like a lathe or like a Dremel, which I got recently, that Dremel saved my life. It becomes a lot easier. But when you just have a knife and sandpaper, oak is so difficult to work with. This is an example of an oak one. This is also one of my this is also one of my favorite ones that I made. This is before I had the Dremel, so this is just knife and sandpaper. Now I'll demonstrate how we can start with the handle and then work our way to the actual wand part. But this was very difficult to do. I still think that the shaft here is a little too thick, but I'm too afraid to mess with it, to be frank. So that's another oak one. I have another oak one right here. You know, I don't know why I do this to myself. I make my most dynamic wands out of oak. I do this to myself. But this one I made for the drawing. When we did the wood drawing, the wand drawings. Got a snake going around the top.
That one was really good. Looks amazing.
Oh, thank you. This one took a while. And I'll show you how I did this one too. I personally think that pine is probably the easiest to work with. It shaves off really easily. And it's really easy to... But the thing about pine is that it's also very brittle. So you want to be very careful when you're working with pine. Oh, this is my most recent one. This is pine. Got a kind of thing in the middle here. So one thing you gotta be careful of is how brittle it is, but that also makes it easier to work with. So that's an example of pine. Pine and oak. This one is oak, but it's just like pure oak branch. Eucalyptus, that could make a really good wand too. But yeah, just get creative. The number one thing about wandwoods is get as creative as possible. When I first started, I kind of kept myself in the box of it's gotta look like it could be in the book or the movies. Don't limit yourself like that. I've made some pretty wild ones that would probably not fly. For example, this one has a funny story actually. So I worked, oh, I almost dropped it. I worked in construction, as some of you may know, and there's a lot of these wands were actually made from finding wood from that construction job and just bringing it home. This one is actually made out of what we call molding, and what that is that's something you see on the corner of your where the wall meets the ceiling. You see some design pattern there sometimes. That's what this is. And I just sanded it down. I made this little tip up here. So anything you see, and it turned out pretty alright.
That's really good.
Thank you.
Something that's made out of molding, that looks amazing.
Thank you. Type of plain wood, a great starter one is pine. I would really recommend to start with pine, because starting with oak, with how long it takes, you might get discouraged and give up. I assure you, do not give up, because the end result will look amazing. Knife. Okay, I'm gonna bring out the knife, just letting you all know, alright? This is a knife that I literally $7 at Home Depot. Like, it doesn't have to be crazy. This one is just like a survival knife. And I use this. This is what I use to make this one right here. So it really doesn't take I mean, always a sharp knife does help. It shaves a lot easier. It does help a whole lot. But if you just have like a knife that you can use, it's super helpful. In terms of sandpaper, I've got some sandpaper here. I've got a bag of sandpaper because I always go back in there. Just like this has obviously been worn, but like kind of like pretty hard grit. It depends on what you want. When you first start, you want a pretty heavy grit, which means that it's very coarse. Um, but when you start getting down to like the finer details, like this right here, you want a softer grit, which means it's not as coarse, and then it starts softening up and making it look really nice.
So we have a couple of questions.
All right, I've got a couple of answers. Sure.
Where do you find your inspiration?
I find honestly, I look around and anything that pops up. I have like a journal that I have with me, and if an idea pops in my head, like, oh, I want to make a wand with a hole in the middle, or I get my inspiration from I don't know where. I just kind of I see something, I see a piece of wood, like I look at this, and I'm like, what's something I haven't done before? And I make a list in my head of things I haven't done before, and I'm like, okay, let's try it. Let's see if it works. Number one thing about wand making is that just trying it, throwing something at the wall, seeing if it sticks. You will have a million. I have a million wands that just didn't work. That just are garbage. But that's supposed to happen. Never think that your original plan will turn out how the wand will. You'll make some sort of mistake, but then that will incorporate itself into the wand somehow. Your original plan usually doesn't get stuck with, but that's the great thing about it. It kind of becomes its own personality as you're working on it. So, my inspiration, honestly, I just kind of pop up with ideas that I haven't done before. I'm thinking about making one with like a gemstone in the middle, something like that, something that's different, something shinier.
All right. So one question I have for you is: have you ever tried making a curved one?
I have. I don't have it with me, but actually, let me see if I can find it. I have a picture of it, and I'll put it in Honeydukes. I made one because I prefer the straighter ones, but just because that's kind of my style, and everyone has their own style.
Of course.
But I did try it, and it did come from a mistake that I made, and I just kind of went with it.
That's cool.
And it turned out pretty okay. Here, I'm putting it in Honeydukes right now. There it is. That is probably the curviest one I've made. And I think it turned out pretty okay. So yeah, I think curved ones are super cool, but they're also very difficult to get right. So be wary about that.
But I was wondering, have you ever worked with any difficult woods, such as cherry?
Cherry, I have not had the opportunity to work with because for me in my area, it's kind of hard to get different kinds of wood. I've worked with spruce. Spruce was really cool. Basically, it was anything I could get my hands on. The main woods that I find is pine, spruce, and oak because that's the main manufactured ones. I would love to try every single wood out and then see how they go. It's just that some are kind of difficult for me to get my hands on. The answer is no. I have probably the most difficult I've worked with was oak. But I would love to try out as many woods as I can. It's just difficult for me to get those kinds of woods at the moment.
Is there a way to recognize a good piece of wood? I heard that you can't use every type of wood. Like, do you need branches, or do you use types of wood you get when chopping wood?
Well, first of all, try to pick a clean piece of wood. What I mean by that is, if you're looking like just for any kind of wood, make sure it's not like, well, obviously rotting, or like, if it doesn't have any bugs in it, or if you're just looking like for a branch. First thing to do, 100%, exactly. Clean wood, clean wand work. take it home, clean the crap out of it. Just clean clean the wood, because last thing you want when you're carving it up is for like, I don't want to get gross, but for a bug to come out of it. That's the last thing you want. So once you get find a piece of wood that you like, especially if it's from just the woods. Go home. Water. It depends on the wood. For this one, I have washed it completely with water, completely sanitized it. You want to make sure you sanitize these as well, because you don't know where this wood has been. So wash it, sanitize it, make it completely habitable, and then you can start working on it. And then after you're done working on it, also sanitize, because that sanitized part that you've already cleaned is gone now because you've whittled it down. So before and after, sanitize, clean. A good piece of wood. I went to Home Depot literally yesterday, and I bought this dowel. This came from here. I broke this off. You can make probably 3-4 wands with this. So just go to Home Depot, get a big dowel. I got this from there too, just a block of wood. That's what I suggest, because you can take one dowel and make like 5 wands out of it. And one of those wands might be perfect. That's what I've done. I went through a whole dowel just to get a good wand. If you want a curved wand, look for more curved branches. If you want a straighter wand, look for as straight of a branch as possible. But obviously that's not possible. The branch is always going to be curvy in some way. An old broomstick? Yeah, you can use an old broomstick. Why not? I don't see why not. So, yeah, as long as it's clean, straight, or curvy if you want it to be curvy, and not falling apart like brittle, then yeah, you could probably use it for a wand. That's the answer.
I had a question from one of the audience members here.
Okay.
Where they live, they don't really have access to any sort of place where they can get readily cut wood. The best source they have is the stuff they find underneath trees and stuff. So, do you have any advice for people who can only work with the wood that has literally fallen out of the tree?
Yes, because that's how I started. Number one thing is be careful. I learned that very quickly. When you're looking for wood in like under trees and stuff, and animals are there too. So you want to be extra careful of where you're going, and you want to know where you're going as well. Make sure the stick. This is really difficult to find a wood that works, because you don't know what you're gonna find, right? Make sure if you find something. Now it could be a big log. I mean, it will take a while, but you could be like a big, like wide stick, and you can still probably whittle a piece of wand out of that. But you just gotta make sure you clean everything. It's about finding a sturdy piece of wood. All right, if you find a sturdy piece of wood that you think you can make a wand out of, it's up to your discretion, to be honest. As long as it's clean and you're not next to like any animals that could hurt you. I would suggest, what I used to do was I would go out, because I have a ditch in my backyard. I would go out and I would grab a basket, and every wand that I think I could possibly make a wand out, or wood I could make a wand out of, I would put it in the basket. Then I would take it home, sift through it, see which ones I could actually use. And once you don't, just toss it. That's what I used to do. So just be safe and be clean. That's my advice.
So, do you need any experience in wood carving before? I like to try wood carving, but never tried something like that before.
I never did. I never had experience in wood carving. The most I got was I was a Boy Scout growing up, and they taught you how to whittle, but like not like sculpt, but just like carve wood off. They taught me the most important rule though, and I'm gonna relay this to you guys. when you're using a knife, always cut away from you. Never cut towards you, because that's how people get hurt. So if you're gonna do this, remember, always cut away from you. All right, and if you're going and you have to go the other way, turn the wand around and then cut that way. Always cut away. But I never had any experience in this at all. I kind of made it up as I went along. It's trial and error, really. So what I would do with the tape, okay, starting from the very beginning, right? You have your wood that you want to use. And what I would do is I would measuring tapes too. Measuring tapes or rulers, always helpful. Measure out how long I want my handle to be. And I would put a piece of blue tape right there. So say that there's blue tape around here. Then, now knife is coming out, letting you guys know what kind of tools are needed for wand making. I just used a knife and sandpaper. That's it, but a Dremel tool, super helpful. It makes the time go half as long. Alright, so anyway. Knife is coming out. So I have the tape here. I'm not gonna put my hand there. And then what I would do is I would mark that space with the knife, like this. I would roll the wand, and then just keep rolling it like that. So I see, without the tape, where that mark is. Right? So now, I don't know if you can see that, there's a very fine mark in the wood. You can't really see it in the wood, but I can see it where I want my handle to be. Now from there, because usually the handles are a little thicker than the shaft part of it, I would go from that mark and I would shave out this way. Alright? And start making the shaft. I always start making the shaft first and leave the handle like this. Because with just a plain, circle, you can get creative in what you want to do with the handle. Okay, I use some kind of clay which hardens over time. One thing you gotta be careful about with clay is that it might crumble. And you want to make sure it doesn't crumble. But if you want to make really fine details and it's more of a mantelpiece than rather something that you're going to be using, then yeah, clay could be an extremely helpful tool. So from here, I would be carving outwards like that until the shaft is there. And then you have a lot to work with this. What I want to demonstrate today is how I do this without any power tools. And show you how you can make designs that are pretty complex with just a knife. And again, I had no experience doing this. 2 bags of sculpting tools, that will be very helpful. So what I did was I would take measuring tape and I would measure out each space here. And then I would open these divots and kind of go a V shape with the knife and just do that all the way around. And then I would take the sandpaper and just really kind of fold it in on itself. And I would go in and sand just like that in these cracks until it eventually made these circles. And then I would kind of sand. You know, it'd be really cool. I will send a picture of how it used to look. So here's how it started. Now see, once again, I did not touch. I started this time on the handle because I thought of a really cool idea and I wanted to start with that. But notice how rugged it looks? That's just because I just cut in a V shape and just sanded that. How can I put a gemstone in a wand without cutting the gemstone? That is something I'm working on right now. I'm thinking of that right now. Because I have a few gemstones at home. And I was going to put it in here. But that is a question I'm still working on.
What grit sandpaper do you use?
I'm trying to remember. Was it 50? I'm pretty sure I got like a 50 at some point.
That's pretty low.
It is a lot, but when you're working with just like a piece of wood, and you want to get as much wood off of it as possible, 50 is very helpful. Varnishes. I was just about to get to varnishes. So I don't usually use varnishes or stain because, in my opinion, I'm just not very good with it. So so I just kind of leave it as it is because I think it looks natural for me, and I'm just not good with. I have stain in the past. This is the first wand I've ever tried making with this, and this is how it turned out. It's very glossy. It's very, very thick. I didn't understand thickness at the time. That curved wand I sent actually has a glossy varnish on it. You just can't tell in the photo. So just whatever varnish you can find at Home Depot, make sure you coat it more than once because it's not going to get all the way the first time. They'll have a Home Depot. Well, any kind of general store that might have varnishes or natural stains. Yeah, natural stains. I've actually have an idea for that that I'm working on, but I don't want to spoil yet. But natural stains, I have been looking into that. Polish the wand or not. The sandpaper that you use, that will naturally make it smooth and polished by itself. But if you want to put a varnish on it to make it nice and shiny and smooth, even more, that helps a lot too. Speaking of sandpaper, once you get your this part, shaved down with your knife, that's when you bring out the sandpaper. This is the long part of the process, right? You're gonna take that sandpaper and you are literally just going to go up and down as fast as you can, and this is until it's really, really small. That's what I did here. This was really thick at one point, and I just sandpapered it all the way down. That's what's going to take forever. So during that process, it's going to be naturally smooth. Acrylic paint. I haven't used acrylic paint, but I've heard that it's not the best for wands. You're certainly willing to try it. Glow in the dark blue wand. I need to write that down. That sounds really cool. But anyway, again, so my suggestion when you first start making a wand, it looks like this. Mark out where you want your handle to be. Start kind of with the shaft, and then with this big block here, just get creative with whatever you want your handle to be, right? Your handle could be simple. For example, this is just it. Like, I just put lines here, and I made a little ball at the end here, and that's it. Because the whole point is this part right here. Not really the handle, right? So this is one from the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. And these guys have the thing in the middle. The metal core. That will keep that from breaking. So if you have the metal core in the middle, honestly, all the merrier. And it keeps it sturdy, keeps it exactly in shape. The only thing is the weight. It'll be a lot heavier. And how you get the metal rod into the wood also comes into question. But if you can somehow do it, that'd be great. Actually, on that note, I've also been working on this idea where I'm trying to find a way to put a hole into the wand and actually putting a core into the wand. That's my next project. Actually having a wand with a core.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, I don't know how I'll do it, but I really want to. Now, once you have... No, I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. I'm trying to answer questions at the same time as doing this. Once you have your basic, it kind of looks like a wand at some point, we can get into the more advanced stuff, such as wood burning. There's a lot of people that want to... I think it's super cool. Of course, again, safety is number one. If you're gonna do wood burning on your wand, always make sure there's someone there as well, and you have the proper safety equipment such as gloves and goggles. this is one wand that I did burning on. So I'll explain how I did it, but again, be very safe. What I did was I used gloves, and I took a paper clip. I kind of bent it into just like a straight shape. Then I took a lighter to it until it turned red, and I pressed it into the wand. Use gloves and use eyeglasses, and always make sure an adult is there as well. And this is the result. Kind of made some like random letters on it. I went around each one of these things. So all I did was, if you notice, each line is the same length. That's because that's how long the paper clip was, and I would just press it into it at different angles. So that's another thing you can do. What's written on it? No idea.
So I've been wondering for a while now. How long have you been doing this? How long have you been enjoying this hobby?
I have been doing this for probably 2 years now. I kind of had a falling off, and then I joined the server, and then I started getting back into it, and that's when I started doing the real intense ones. So about
2 years is a long time.
Yeah.
And the amount of progress you've made is commendable. Really.
Thank you.
I had another question. I think this was from the audience. Where was it? I'm so sorry. I'll just ask a different one. So how did you start this? Like, when did your journey with Harry Potter begin? Like, how old were you when you read the first
wow.
books, saw the first movies? If you have a favorite, we won't judge you.
I am sorry to admit this. I was a little kid. My first experience was the movies. And I know, but when I was a kid, I saw the second one in theaters, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. For a long time, I thought the second one was the first one, because I was a kid and I didn't know any better. But I loved every second of Chamber of Secrets. I thought it was the most beautiful movie of all time. I loved it. And it was dangerous giving an ADHD kid something that whimsical, because that just kind of, my brain just took that. Then I bought all the books and I read them, and I just it's kind of spiraled from there. And of course that led into like wand making, because I've always liked building things, and they have this thing here that this guy that makes woodworking things, and my brain was like, yes, I need to do that, like, immediately. So I came into Harry Potter just because like magic is one of those things that fascinates me, and it's just, it's a magical world. How can't you like that, right?
That is very true. So,
Yeah.
when you finished carving the wood, what do you do so that it doesn't rot?
I haven't really done much, and the wood hasn't rotted yet. For example, I think it's because I usually use cured woods, because a lot of these came from a store, like a dowel. They started as like a dowel, and then I carved into them. So that means they won't rot as quickly. In terms of this one, though, that I just found, it hasn't rotted at all. The bark is still on it. I haven't really experienced rotting of yet. Everything, I've had this one for, God, probably 3 years now, and it's like exactly the way that I made it the first time. So I don't know. Definitely, if you want to put varnish on it, varnish protects it. Probably your best bet is varnish if you're worried about rotting.
Could you elaborate on some of the objects that you can heat up and press on the wood?
Yes. Now again, if I used a paper clip and then just a lighter. That's all I used. Just kind of twist the paper clip into whatever kind of design you want to press into it, and then light it up, and then a lighter, like a Zippo. and just kind of press it into the wood. Now, pine is great with this. I've tried it on oak. It just does not work on oak very well at all. With pine, it's such a light color that it just pops out of the wood. So if you're going to do it, choose a very light wood, all right? Because if you choose a darker wood that is very tough, it's not going to imprint very well.
Could we have a guide? Some sort of paper guide. Somewhere where you write all the things that you did, so we can keep those informations and maybe share them. With always giving credit to you, but maybe share those informations and.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I could write something down. I mean, but I think the more important thing is that you guys get creative and do your own thing. But the way I start it, and I could write this down, is that your number one tools will be blue tape, because blue tape is great because when you put it on the wood, it won't leave residue when you take it off. It'll just come off clean. Blue tape, a knife, a measuring tape, and sandpaper. Those are your main tools. And mark where your handle will be first, and then cut away from that to start your shaft. And then whatever design that you think of for your what I suggest when you're making this, when you're making the handle, kind of like take a pencil and like draw it out first. Kind of have like some sort of idea of where it's gonna go. It might not go in that direction, but it will at least guide you in a proper direction. And then see where it goes from there. That's probably that's pretty much what you missed. Just get creative, you know? Try something, oh, I don't know if this will work. Then just try it. If it doesn't work, then it won't, you know? I have so many wands in my garage right now.
Coming back to something a lot deeper,
Okay.
how has Harry Potter changed your life?
Changed my life. Wow. I feel like it gave me a lot of things that a lot of people needed. Such as like, it gave me another world to live in for a little bit. Because sometimes we all need that. Sometimes, you know, it gets a little tough around here. And you gotta go to a different place. And Hogwarts was that place for me. It gave me a place to go. And it connected me with people. So yeah, I feel like it made me a more creative person. Because it brought me into the world of magic. And what's more creative than that? I don't think I would be able to do a lot of the things I do creatively without it. Because now I'm writing a book, and I don't think I would be inspired to write a book without those books. That's
What is
pretty
this
much it.
book about? Is this about your hobby?
No. This is a completely separate book. It's a little convoluted. So if anyone wants to know about it, you can kind of ask me after. Because
I'll be sure to do
I want
that.
to go into it, but
Yeah, I understand.
I have another
Thank you so much
question.
for sharing that much. Is there anything else you'd like to share about your Harry Potter experience and how it may have impacted your hobby and skill? Which kind of links me to the other question. Have you tried making Lucius Malfoy's wand yet?
I have definitely looked at many 3D models of Lucius Malfoy's wand. Kind of looking at it from every angle, because that snake head is so cool. I want to know how to do that. I've not tried it. I definitely want to. I have kind of been toying with making a wand for each house, and that is one that I might do for Slytherin. And in terms of how it affects my craft, I definitely take what I see from like the movies and read from the books into account when I make these wands. Because, for example, of course the bumps, like the Elder Wand, right? Like, so that's kind of my inspiration for that. As well as this. I mean, I feel like that's very Elder One-ish. Yeah, I just take inspiration from what I see, and I kind of put my own twist on it. The runes from Snape's wand, kind of inspired me to put this here. So I learn a lot from the movies and from the books, and it inspires me every day. Not just from the wands, but from the world, like such as like the creatures that are in this, in the one. There are a lot of creatures that haven't. I'm thinking about. Like I know there's a bow truckle wand out there, but I want to make my own version of the bow truckle wand, like a niffler, something like that. Blast-ended screw. Like I want to make wands like that are kind of reminiscent of these things. So, as creative as the world is, I want to be just as creative with this hobby. So, yeah, that's the answer.
That is very eloquent. Thank you so much for sharing that. I will definitely buy anything that you make at this point. I've learned enough to be like, shut up and take my money.
I've been thinking about an Etsy store. I have been thinking about it because I have a lot of wands I don't know what to do with. Yeah,
Good idea.
I have other wands here. These are the last wands that I have here. Just to show them. This one shows that you can use whatever you find in your garage. This is just a piece of rope that I kind of put on the end of this. I kind of twirled.
That's very creative.
And this is what I'm working on right now. It's still in the works. So, spoilers.
Now, speaking of being in the works, we have a question here from the audience.
Okay.
Is it possible to make to use other materials for the ones, or does it just need to be wood?
Oh no! I mean, again, get creative. I use wood only because I don't know. In my head, it's more accurate to the moves in books, and that's kind of satisfying to me. But in the end of the day, you can use whatever. I've seen people use like bits of plastic to make a wand. I've seen people. You know, if you can make it in a shape and call it a wand, if it's a wand to you, it's a wand. Like it doesn't have to be wood. It's just for me, it's something satisfying about using wood. A 3D model of one, yeah. You could make if you have a 3D printer, 3D print a wand. Why not? Go for it.
Aurora Malfoy wanted to know if the core of the wand could be of a thicker material.
Unless you have like Time Lord technology, where it's bigger on the inside. But I mean, I don't think so because you'd have to put the core. The core means it's inside. Oh, well, I suppose. Wait a minute. What if the core could protrude out from the wand a little bit? That could be interesting. If the core kind of protrudes out from the wand a little bit, I'm gonna think about that. For now, I'm gonna say I don't think so, but that sounds like a cool idea.
Is there a type of knife that works best for woodworking?
I mean, knife is coming out again. I really like this guy. I don't really remember what it's called exactly, but it's got this kind of part right here. That allows me to go in and do more like finer details. But honestly, any kind of knife, as long as it's not like a butter knife or like a kitchen knife. Like I've tried doing some detailing down there. Any knife that you can kind of like go in and like kind of scoop out wood. Like this kind of ridge here allows me to like scoop out wood. That is probably the best kind of knife that I would suggest.
The last question that we have for today would be, how much time does it take to make a detailed wand? Like every single bit of a wand is so highly detailed.
Oh my gosh. Well, without the Dremel, with just this guy probably took me a month because one, it's oak, and using sandpaper on oak is not very effective, and it's also the designs and smoothing it out. Yeah, it takes a while. With a Dremel, 3 weeks probably. And that's on top of living a life, going to school, going to work. If I just could do nothing but work on the one, I could probably get done in a week. But there are other things. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. How many hours do you dedicate to this, by the way?
Hours?
Yeah.
If I'm really working on a wand, I'll probably dedicate like 3 hours. My best, like ideal, is probably 3 or 2.5 hours a day. If I could, I would. But eventually your hands start getting tired, and you're like, okay, I need to take a break. There's like dust everywhere, and you're like, okay, I need to clean up. Like you'll get to a point where you're just like, okay, time to stop.